few months after we moved into our house, just as we were starting to enjoy the warmer spring weather outside, we started to hear a strange tapping sound. After a little research on the internet, Devin found the culprit, a wood-boring insect that likes the old oak used to build our house. Devin found a very disturbing video on YouTube that helped us actually see what was making the sound. The YouTube video by Ross Charters is incredible because he has actually caught a mature beetle on film while tapping. I encourage you to check it out. I'm putting a link in the description below. Note that the video shows an adult tapping, and this is how they signal to other beetles that they're ready to mate. They actually do their damage when they're just hatched and more like worms in the wood. It took quite some time, but we finally found a contractor, Paul Marlowe, specializing in timber frame structures and familiar with the Deathwatch beetle. On the phone, Paul explained that if we can solve our moisture issues, the beetles can't thrive. They like the old oak timbers supporting the building, but they can only get at them when they're wet. We arranged for Paul to come out for a consultation, and he agreed to let us record his visit. In this video, we share his top tips. Let's start with his guidance on installing a dry well to get the water away from the foundation.
But solid pipe, I like to go straight down and then elbow.
Yep.
Solid.
Okay.
Dump right into a dry well.
Yep.
And you know, I've used perforated pipe and stuff, but the one that I really like best now are those little plastic domes for septic systems. And then, you know, you backfill, and then fabric cloth, and then soil, and forget about it.
Okay.
If you do it right, you can forget about it. You got to get it away from the house.
Yeah.
So
That's
you have to figure that out.
This little area here basically holds water. I think it comes down off the hill, it comes off the roof.
You're getting
and the
tons of
gutters,
it right there.
And it just sits here, and that's where we get into the basement, is right along this wall and along the kitchen
You can
wall.
solve that. I wouldn't fix your basement until you solve this.
There's no above grade
You're gonna want to
wellhead.
know where your well is before you do your dry well.
The well, I believe, is in this area, and the water line runs basically straight this way under that big window.
So I would find that well. I would dig it out.
Yeah.
I would measure, make markings, and document it, photograph it, and find out more about it.
Yeah.
And this site is just a little bit of a skew there.
A little bit of a bump.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Probably. Your boards that intersect the soil there, you never want organic matter so close to wood.
Right.
You can see these boards are rotting.
Yeah, those are
on
gone.
there.
Yep.
You know, just rake it away for now, and then you can deal with it.
Yeah.
That end grain needs to be dealt with. I have techniques I developed to seal that and stop the berry. At least slow it down.
Right.
I remember you mentioning the peeling paint.
Yes.
It doesn't bother me, but it's like a flag.
There might be something else
You
going on.
want to check it out.
Yeah.
It could be a big issue. It could be a next to nothing issue.
Right.
You know, the peeling paint is often the first sign of decay.
Yeah.
And so you want to find out, why is it peeling? Is it peeling just because poor paint prep, or is it moisture being pushed from the inside to the outside?
And it looks like they did a pretty poor paint job on this house to sell it, essentially.
Very common.
So it's very possible that they basically didn't do any prep and just sprayed over it. But
did they spray?
But there was a lot of overspray on the windows.
So they sprayed.
So I believe they sprayed.
Don't spray. It doesn't look right, and it doesn't. I don't know. I don't think it's appropriate. You know, brushing it just does a better job. You know. Now you can roll and then brush.
That's what we did on our last house.
But don't just roll.
Right. Yeah, we rolled it and then we brushed it to give it the texture and everything.
Roll it to get it on the wall, and then brush it in to work it in.
Yep.
And to give it the streaks.
Yeah.
The visual. says red cedar there?
This one right here, we had tree work done. The guy said it was an arborvitae.
Arborvitae?
Yeah.
Wow.
And very big.
What an awesome tree.
Yeah.
The bark looks similar to red cedar, but I never see red cedar that big.
Well, that's what he said. I called it a red cedar, and he said, no, you're never going to see a red cedar this big.
And you can see you got decay starting there.
Yes.
That's newer wood, I think, there.
Yeah.
That trim looks newer, and but you could potentially stop that and fix it if you so choose.
That's
it
what
doesn't look too
I kind of want to pull the trim off and see what's going on in there, and then you know put
I won't
different
spend
trim
much
on.
time on this, but
Yeah.
this is my real.
Give it a poke. It's pretty soft.
So pulling this trim and this trim is fine, but pull it like you plan to reuse it.
Yes.
And then you can always throw it out.
Yep.
Okay. And I don't have the nail puller that I normally use with me, but I would show you that. So, and this is quite rotted.
Yes.
And this isn't the greatest wood that they used here. And so, yes, that's a good idea. If you pull this too, then you'll have better access.
Yeah.
You want to chase the rot. You want to keep going until you know what you're up against.
Right.
And this is going to promote decay. Things at least 3 feet from the building, it's never done.
Right.
4 is even better, but you want airflow in there.
Sure.
You know. Any other questions out here before we go inside? Or you tell me.
No, I don't.
I know timber's the main
Timbers
theme here.
and I want well, let's look at the basement at the foundation walls. The
Yep.
mortar's coming out,
Okay.
and so I think a lot of this water issues are probably leading to that. But I think that's most of what all inside stuff. So.
Get an inexpensive humidistat. A portable one, you can get a handheld one for probably less than $200, and you can let it acclimate in a room for a half hour, get a reading, another room. You can read it around the house. We'll watch it go up in the summer and down in the winter.
Yeah.
But that might give you a little bit of information.
Yeah. So this is it's paneled on the other side, but these are pretty big.
Yeah,
and
very nice.
Probably original.
Very nice. So we can see the beetles got in here.
Yep. Yeah, they're pretty much
Pretty much, they touched almost everything,
I
maybe?
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
This wall especially it's very
So
powdery.
that's a clay mortar, I think?
Yep.
That's probably the original clay mortar.
Okay.
That's just breaking down. And then this is another generation of mortar.
Yep. So there's a lot of like loose stuff that was put over the top in some places.
So, have you looked into lime mortars at all?
I did a little reading on lime mortar, yeah.
So, I would find out, as much as you can about the foundation before you plow into it, like what kind of stone it is. You look like you may have variations. You got maybe some granite in there, I don't know, but I'm not sure what this stone is here. And even this, it's got a lot of quartz in there or something. But, maybe you can find out. It's kind of nice to know. And then if you ever do repointing, boy, it's a lot of repointing.
Well, that's the thing is there's a lot of walls are down here, so.
We did that for weeks on end on an 1860 house that I used to live in, and I had my crews there. And it was tedious. The stones were a little bit bigger, very time consuming. Looked beautiful when it's done, though. We never came out so far,
Right.
It was like if you were to take a plumb stick and find the proudest point of your bulge and make a definitive mark, and then you can monitor that monthly, yearly, whatever. I don't think I'd worry too much. Your foundation's probably really wide.
Yeah.
You may find at some point where you may be able to slip in a probe and see how big it is. You know, if you find an access point.
Yep.
Don't know. Stones are big on the bottom.
Sure.
I wouldn't be too worried. I've seen bulges that went way out and were there for decades.
Yeah.
And, you know, everything is holding the building up.
Exactly.
You know? and so if that loses its, you know, the floor picks up the load, but not to ignore these things.
Sure.
You know?
Like if you eye down this left wall here, it's basically
on this wall.
Yep, it's at the far end.
Oh, okay. Yep,
And this
I see it.
is you know, the other side of this is the courtyard area that has the water. So
Oh, is it? Okay.
that's really the only bulge I've seen in the whole place.
And that's not too bad.
It's not bad.
That's not too bad. Now, when you get that water dealt with, before you get that water dealt with, you might want to dig down and see what you got going up there on your foundation on the outside.
Yep.
You might want to repoint on the outside.
Okay.
If you go down a couple feet and you can work in there, I mean, that there again, it's going to be a lot of work for you. I don't think you're going to want to try and push this back.
No.
Sometimes that's an option, but here, since they've repointed this bulge doesn't look like it's increased too much.
No.
Do you have a HEPA vacuum?
We don't have a HEPA.
You want to have a true HEPA.
Yes.
I like canisters. No upright. And you need, clean air is so important. And I don't recommend you use anything in the house except the HEPA. I don't care what you're vacuuming, because if you have a bad filter, most vacuums to me are poor filtration. You can be pumping into the air and making it dirtier than if you didn't vacuum at all.
Right.
Okay, so the investment is good. And I don't have the model that I really like. They don't make anymore.
Of course.
But I got Danish vacs, most of them, and I like them, but something quiet, something you can extend the hose. I could run about 25 to 30 feet of hose on my vac, and you get a remote switch.
Yep.
And you can turn it on, turn it off.
And so he had said, if you want a vapor barrier in the basement, because right now, I mean, we're standing on gravel, there's rock, there's some spots have concrete, but I'm sure it's just on the ground. He'd recommend basically running, you know, putting plastic and like spray foaming, run the plastic maybe a foot up, then spray foaming over that junction to basically seal the wall to the plastic. Does that make sense, or are there other ways that people do that, or should we not even worry about it?
I'd like to do something a little less visual.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, you can't put plastic on top of this and then we can't walk on it, right? So.
Well, what I like better than plastic is EPDM.
Okay.
That's for glue down roofing and for pond liners.
Yeah.
Okay. So they have different mill thicknesses from 45 to 60 to 90. 45 is probably fine, but it's real heavy.
Yeah.
It'll last forever. And it won't be as easy to work with. It's going to be more expensive. But that's what I like.
Yeah. And would you say, like, because, like, would we even bother with the concrete section, or mostly just on the dirt?
The concrete section, you know what you can do? This would be the starting point. And let's remember, first gear, okay?
Yeah.
So take a piece of square piece of plastic, clear plastic, put it down. See if the condensation gets underneath.
Yep.
Put a piece over there, put a piece over there.
Kind of see where the moisture's coming from.
See where the moisture's coming from. It's probably coming off 24/7, 365.
Yep.
Maybe just a tiny bit over there. And then you can decide. Maybe you can use a paint on that.
Sure.
Or maybe you can ignore it.
Yep.
Or maybe you want to membrane it. My shop floor has EPDM on the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm walking around on EPDM all the time.
Okay.
You know, I did it not as much for moisture as I did for just so I can vacuum it,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and it's a little softens the
cushioning.
concrete. Just foam scares me.
Yeah, well,
It's like that's the modern material.
Yeah.
Okay. And there might be a better way, you know, and so I'd rather sleep on it and think, and the light goes off, and then you think of a better approach.
yeah, absolutely.
So you're writing the spec, and then if it's a new spec, you got to research it and then create the technique to install it. But it's not a bad idea to try and minimize moisture, because that's feeding.
Yeah, and this is
the beetles.
These are the floorboards. There's no subfloor, you know. So like, if we go upstairs, you can see
That's
the
your
lights.
finished floor.
This is our finished floor right here.
Yeah.
So it's just going. Whoop.
Is your floor pitched up top there?
Well, so what they've done is they've actually, if you step
Or did
up
they
the
pad
stairs, if you go up like maybe 2 stairs,
Yeah.
you can see that they essentially built. You can see right in there.
Oh, they padded
So
it.
they basically built like
I
a
see.
landing
I see.
to level it out.
I see. Okay. So this was originally the floor height. This was the original.
I think so.
elevation?
Yeah, and like so, you know, this is a original stair,
Yeah,
but they've kind of matched that with this landing.
I see. I'll have to look at that from upstairs.
And I'm guessing they
Get a bit-
did that when this beam essentially became not
Yeah.
connected anymore.
Yeah. So you know what? This animal here, you got to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is gonna rust out on you on the bottom here.
Yep.
Eventually. Okay. Constantly taking moisture, and this is a solid
I'll say, do you
lollipop.
think this is filled with concrete?
I believe it is. I believe it is because it doesn't have any adjustment,
Sure.
and those telepost type adjustments are hollow.
Yeah.
And so this has got concrete inside, which doesn't have much strength
No.
by itself. and so this is something that'll probably last for many years, but it's not the greatest.
Yeah.
And so you're gonna have to monitor that, you know.
And so there's a lot of them, obviously, and like, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of these wood ones, you know, I've seen where they'll dig out and pour a concrete footing and put in, you know, a new lolly column or something. Is that something that
Well, what
would be worth it? Or
you can do that. That's what an engineer would probably have you do. What I have done many times is I get what's called a catch basin block, which is super dense concrete.
Okay. For like street drainage,
8 by
is that?
8 by 8 by 12. Heavier than the bigger blocks. They're just really strong. And we make a really nice pad. We try not to disturb the soil. And if we, because not likely anything's going to heave in here.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So the problem with what I'm telling you though is it's a block that's going to come up and out unless you bury it or flush it or just bring it up just a little bit.
Right.
But we've oftentimes put them on top of concrete floors or put them on dirt floors. We make a level pad. We get it nice and level. We put a membrane usually over it, and then you go with wood oftentimes.
Okay.
You know, just got to cut your wood just right.
Yeah, yeah. You can see
and then
they've,
you
they've
jack
done
it
like
up.
cedar shims
You
here
see-
to kind of
Yeah, so
fix their
what
cutting.
you would do is you would jack up you get your height, and then you're set up with 2 bottle jacks usually,
Yep.
and you just pick it up just enough to get it in there, and then you let the load on it.
Yep.
Boom. Usually throw a couple screws in.
Sure.
It's going to stay there.
Yeah, yeah.
But so, and you can see what they did here. Pressure treated wood, I wouldn't even touch it.
Yeah.
It's like they do it because it won't rot, but you don't have to worry. If you put a membrane on the underside, you're never gonna have that
There's no
post
moisture
rot,
there anyway.
you
Yeah.
know, and especially if it's up just enough, you know, and it just looks better. And this has chemicals in it, and
Yeah.
you know, and you never want sharp corners like that.
Right.
Always break them. You know, sometimes when you buy 4x, you can get them. They ease the corners. Otherwise, you should do it yourself. So yeah, you can see there's a lap joint right there.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's like a big gap here.
No, that's
just a crack.
I think that's this lap joint right here.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. See?
Oh yeah. Yep.
It's real small,
I see.
but they had to put this here because of that.
Yeah.
So I think it looks to me like this is the older one
Yep.
and this is the newer one. But this is still old.
Yeah.
That's still an old timber. So you got hardly any beetles on those main timbers.
So yeah, down here, I mean, the main ones seem pretty in good condition relatively compared to, you can see almost all of these joists have, holes, and the attic is really where you see a lot more of it.
So you see these holes, how small they are?
Yep.
I think that's powder post.
Okay.
The one I saw over there on the boards, you can see they're probably twice the size.
Yep.
They're probably Deathwatch.
Okay.
And this is just a wonderful piece of timber here. I mean, the dimensions kind of catch my eye. It's like 4x4, 4x4.5, and it's solid. It's an old hardwood timber.
Yep.
And you got no real decay to
Just
be
the
concerned
surface,
with
really.
here. So it's superficial
Yep.
right here. And you can see they left the bark on,
Yep.
which is common. That eventually falls off as it's been doing. And then you see how it breaks across the fissures here?
Yep.
That's a brown rot usually.
Yeah, we can
Okay,
move some of this.
brown rot fungi. And there again, I don't think it's too deep. It's just, it's what it is. You might want to get into some borates, some liquid borates. You probably researched that.
Yep.
And, vacuum first. And you could do borates as a preventative. It's really a low toxic product.
Yeah, so this is facing east right now,
Okay.
and the kitchen door is right here, the one that we came
So there's
in.
a hallway here.
Yeah, basically the kitchen is right above us.
Oh, this is the kitchen.
Yep.
And this is coming into the kitchen this way.
Yep.
Okay. So how's the floor feel up there?
It doesn't feel too bad, really. It's got some waves to it, but it's not. There are worse spots in the house, let's say that.
So this doesn't appear to be a structural problem. If you don't notice anything, the boards are tight to the joists. There's no real break in it. It's hollow, but the load is being transferred.
Right.
So you may have a lamination of flooring up there.
Probably.
Is this, because what kind of finished floor you got?
There's like linoleum sheet.
Oh yeah, so you
It's
probably have,
probably
you
on
might even
plywood.
have plywood under that, So you can see they kind of, it looks like they put a finish, it's kind of like a brownish, kind of a bronzy look.
Almost like trying to make it look like an old timber, or is that
I don't know, maybe so. Maybe just to darken it, either that or it's just the patina that naturally took. But it doesn't look quite like it's just a patina.
Right.
If you ever find that out, I'd be interested in knowing.
Yeah, so I didn't even notice. These boards back here do look.
These
definitely
are
older.
wider here. These are tongue and groove too, I think. But they're wider and older. And
These are the same ones that come over this way, because these are the
Yeah.
ones I've
Oh,
looked
yes.
at from underneath.
Okay. So this indicates to me a high moisture,
Right.
Yeah, I see it.
all the green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually thought I was going to see, and I haven't seen the whole main deck yet, but I thought I was going to see more aggressive beetle damage. And I've seen a lot. I've seen some that's been way worse than this. So I'll tell you, the timbers so far, you know, nothing too extreme. They've already cut out the stuff that they had to, apparently, that I've seen. And the timber in here looks like less of an issue.
Yeah.
So you wonder why, and you can see there's the wrap there.
Asbestos.
Yeah.
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 We have some of that here and there.
Yeah. Okay. This is the size timbers that can carry a serious load.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, this is water-sawn. What's the date of the building again?
Well,
1785?
1785 was the main house.
Oh.
We're not sure if this was original or added on sometime later.
Because the brick.
Still looks kind of old, you know, but
This is water-sawn boards.
these here.
Yeah, yeah. So you see that the kerf marks, the saw marks, are 90 degrees to the edge.
Yep.
So it went through a saw that
Like
was
a
going up
bandsaw
and
kind
down.
of thing. Okay.
Water sawn.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Now it would be the same effect that you get with a bandsaw today that goes around.
Sure.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
So they're rough underneath. You know, that date could be. These could be. I don't know what the age of these are.
Yeah.
I mean, they had boards like this way into the 19th century. So, and this is tongue and groove. So tongue and groove to me would be more like 19th century, where they were set up. I mean, they could have definitely made tongue and groove by hand back in the 18th century, but they would normally use wider boards. You know?
Right. Yeah. These are what,
It's a lot
8
of
or
work.
10 inches or something.
Yeah, so I think to me this would be 19th century flooring. So you have sheathing, wide board sheathing.
Yep.
That's when they did that in the late 60s or earlier maybe.
Well, yeah. So I don't.
Because the 60s,
I'm not sure if they pulled the sheathing off or if they left the sheathing and put new siding, but there's this, you know, we can obviously see this insulation, but I've found this in some of the walls downstairs too. So it seems like they might have pulled the sheathing, insulated from the outside, possibly.
so this sheathing reminds me of something, you know, well, you got a combination. You got some square edge here, and then you got tongue and groove here.
Right.
The tongue and groove would be more common, and those are really wide, so that would probably be more like early 20th century,
Okay.
I'm guessing.
Yep.
Yeah, whether or not that could have been done in the 60s too, but it could have been done in the 20s.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the boards got narrower and narrower over the years.
Sure.
I mean, that's 9. That's a full
Gotta be
12
12
inches.
inch. Yeah.
And yeah, that's a 1x12, which you can still get.
Right.
So these are probably Deathwatch beetle. You can see the holes are bigger, and they ate that one good. See that?
Oh, good.
Yep.
That's still pretty seriously eaten there. Now down here, not so much. Look at that, right here they got it. So this is a board applied to the timber.
Right.
Now, you got to realize you have a stud frame right under that. So that's being carried by the studs.
Uh-huh.
They definitely must have had some kind of leaking here. And these boards, again, these look water sawn. Now, you like I said, you can get the same effect even today with a bandsaw mill.
Right.
But these boards, are not original in my quick estimation.
Actually, I'm
here.
just noticing now, the boards up here
Yep.
from basically this purlin
They're
up
different?
are different. They don't line up.
So they did repairs down here, right?
Yep. Yep.
More than likely. So the end of this is,
And this purlin's
Is
not
eaten.
original either. Actually, this is like a 4x6, and these are the rest of them are all like trees.
oh, I see. So they put a new purlin in, and you can see this one is hewn, maybe, probably hewn, and it is not. It's cleaned up, but yeah, that's more a common size. Then they put a larger one here. I've seen them where these are so they're deflected, major deflection. So this was good. What they did there, it was probably really bad down here.
Yeah.
Over there, that looks pretty good. So when you clean up like an area like this or anywhere, you may see more frass over time. Now, it does not necessarily mean that there's still activity, but you know there's still beetle activity.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what I was going to say was, if you get more frass powder from the beetles, it's still frass, but it's more powdery. It could just be shaking out of the timbers
Sure.
too, as opposed to
Actively
the larvae
eating.
eating actually.
Okay.
And they eat when they're in the they call them woodworms too, because when they're a beetle, they don't eat anymore.
Oh.
My understanding, when they're in the larvae state, that's when they're eating.
Okay.
And
So we don't have to be mad at the ones that we see.
The other ones we find are
Well, they've
are
already
done.
eaten to become
Yeah,
beetles.
I guess so,
So we can't
yeah.
be mad at them.
Yeah. So
principal rafters are just kind of cool.
Yeah.
They're just kind of cool. You don't see them as much. So you can see this principal rafter's a little bit deflected. I can
Yeah.
even tell from here. And that one, maybe not as much, but it's still deflected a little. It's not a big problem.
I was peeking at what's in our ceiling. So there's some loose boards here.
Boy, they really did a lot of work up here.
They did. That's what I was realizing. These are like 2x12s.
Oh.
Um,
They would normally be up here to be like 4x4s or something.
right.
Dropped right into the tenon, or maybe something a little deeper than that, but
Yeah, because these go below the bottom of that timber.
oh, I
and
see.
You can
Yeah,
actually
because the
see-
original ones would have been up probably.
Right.
And the timber would protrude down. Boy, look at all the work they did on the chimney.
We were told that the chimney was rebuilt. I forget when.
Early 20th
Early
century.
20th century,
Yeah. Completely rebuilt.
like from the ground up.
Oh, really?
So
Wow.
I don't know if there was issues there with it falling down or whatever. But yeah, it's not lined. It's not like modern safety. But
Did you ever have it inspected?
when we did our house inspection, the guy kind of looked at it. It's hard to see from the top because the cap is so close to the top of the chimney.
Oh,
but
is it really? Huh?
yeah,
Is it a slate cap?
it's a slate cap.
Oh.
It's 3 bricks from the
Oh.
crown to the cap, and there's like wire mesh that's been cemented in to keep all the birds and whatever out. But
Do you
so-
ever plan to burn wood?
well, so we are talking to a place right now. We want to get a stove for next year, so putting in a liner and all that stuff. But those details up there, I'm not sure how they're gonna work
They'll have
with
to
that.
pull that.
Yeah,
Yeah. But they put it back on.
I hope so.
Yeah. So they're gonna they'll do an inspection for you.
Right. Yeah.
So it looks like we got the original boards here,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got another set of strip sheathing or
Yeah.
spaced roofers. These are what we would call spaced roofers, and then these are also, but they're perpendicular. And then you got plywood here, I guess. Huh?
Yeah.
I see.
A little bit of everything.
That adds a lot of strength.
Right.
Each lamination adds strength.
Sure.
So it takes the load off of the timbers, I think, eventually.
Kind of spreads it out.
It spreads it out, especially the plywood.
Mm-hmm.
And there's clapboards outside here, right?
There
On
are,
top
yeah.
of this.
Yep.
Yeah, so, you know, your timber in general, I was expecting to see more damage. A lot of times this tiger here has a lot of damage because of the access from around the windows.
Sure.
And you can see that that's the case a little bit, but it's still not that bad from what we can see. And, yeah, you could have fun with a new vac every day for the rest of your life, probably.
Seriously.
To add strength to this at all, whether it's like a, you know, a 2x6 on edge or anything, or should we just not even worry about it?
Well, you know, I think because of the lamination and you got one roof up, you got one layer of shingles,
Right.
I think I would just live with it.
Okay.
I don't think it would be a problem. You know, are you going to finish this off or just leave
Probably
it be?
not. It'll just be storage, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah, because this place gets hot up here,
Yeah.
man. Hot.
we
So-
may, like with our new heating situation, we may have like an air handler up here.
Oh, okay.
So we may build, maybe we might put it in like a spot where we can kind of like insulate that little box, but I don't think we're going to finish this
I
area
see.
off.
Well, that's kind of nice because I think it's nice to be able to see.
Yeah.
Exactly. We don't want to hide this.
Right.
You see, look at the effort they did to make that ridge.
Yeah.
You know, the ridge beam. That's cool.
Are frogs slimy?
Yes.
What? Make sure one doesn't go on our faces.